Okay, so this is just going to be a quick video on the decks I use on ladder. The main ones are going to be Stormhaven, Bat Aggro, this is Shadow Aggro, Midrange Sword, and TempoForest. And I'm just going to go through, kind of make choices. I mean, honestly, most of these are just like, you can pretty much, these are mostly standard lists, like you won't find anything too different. So for Stormhaven, triple Pinion Prayer, triple Sacred Plea, double Minute, double Heavenly Hand. I found 3 to be not that useful because I don't get his effect off that often. Like especially like with all effects where it revolves around evolves, I rarely get their effects off. Triple Hollow Dogma, triple Blackened Scripture, triple Beast Call Aria. If you see both of these in your starting hand, Hollow Dogma and Beast Call, you've pretty much won. It's such a broken combo. Double Barrage, like Fairy Hate. Double Priestess, 3 is a bit cloggy. Triple Bird Song, Erd for the OTKs. Broken as turn 4, trades 3 for 1 usually. Um, I usually always run 1 Execute, 2 Dance of Deaths in like tempo control decks. Execute just for Path to Purgatory. I have one of these in here. I don't know why. You could probably replace it with something else, but this was just cause like I think I was facing so much aggro. I just wanted like a taunt. Double moon, double moon. I don't think you need 3. 3 is a bit too late game, but good burst, good control. Um, yeah, just a very good card. And then triple Garuda, cause it's stupidly broken. Reduces your amulets by 3 and does 3 face damage. Oh, and something some people are confused on. The subtract deal 3 damage. You don't have to subtract 3 from an amulet. Like you can just drop this as like a 6 mana 3 face damage. You can use it to close out some games. And that's pretty much just a Stormhaven. So how you want to play this deck? Pretty much, you want to see like, you want to see your early amulets basically in your starting hand. If not, then your early removals. Like Scripture is really good. Scripture, it denies Shadow Generation and it denies Death Rattle or Last Word effects. Yeah, just basically control the board until you can, and then aggressively go face with your storms. That's why it's Stormhaven. And then use Erd in conjunction with Divine Birdsong usually to push in that extra 3 damage. Oh, and then if you're ever behind, just pop this guy. He 3 for 1s almost always. If not, he'll always 2 for 1. Alright, Bat Aggro. Okay, triple Ambling Wraith. Solid 1-drop. The one of the Cursed Blood Vampire, you can place more. I rarely get the Vengeance effect off, but I just like, in aggro decks, I just like having more 1-drops, so it's just usually a 1 mana 1/2. Usually just a Goblin. Blood Wolf, really good charge. Evolve it late game for 4 face damage. Vania, the key person of the deck, you almost always want to evolve her because she summons a bat. And then just try to combo her with like your bat generator effects like Vampiric Fortress, Killer Devil, and Summon Bloodkin. But yeah, that's her. You could tempo her out early, but I would suggest waiting until you can combo off. I mean, she is like a strong play regardless. Blood Pack for the card draw. Deal 2 to yourself. Some synergy, draw 2 cards. Razor Reclaw. Aggro based. It's just a stronger. What's the form? Better than the 4 mana deal 3. It's just 2 mana deal 3. Summon Bloodkin. Solid card to drop anytime. Same with Vampiric Fortress, because not many decks main amulet hate, so you're pretty safe drawing this. Yeah, it's also like just make sure you calculate the face damage correctly, like the end of turn damage. And also it will count all your bats at the end. So say you have 4 cards, including this on the field, and one of them is a bat. So Vampiric Fortress will summon a bat and then deal deal that much damage to your opponent. So it's not like it deals damage based on how many bats you have before it summons its bat. Killer Devil, Bat Generation, good overall stat line, 3/2 for a 3. I mean, it's average stat line, but it's good enough. Midnight Vampire, once you flood your bats, just drop this. Like, I mean, even dropping it with only 1 bat's pretty value because it's just a 3 mana 2/4. Mini Soul Devil, good evolve. It's usually a 2 difference in health every time you evolve something, so that's always good enough. Just the one of these. I like this card because it gets through late game taunts a lot, which I had some trouble with. Demonic Strike, you almost always go phase. You never want to waste 4 mana doing 3 damage to an enemy minion. Night Horde, a bit of control, but also bat generation. Wind Guide, because you always have bats. And then, like I said in my previous video, I almost always use these. And then I actually find Bloody Mary not to be bad as kind of a late game finisher, because you do have quite a few cards that damage yourself, especially um, Razor Claw. So this is basically a turn 7 out of hand 5 damage to your opponent with Bloody Mary. And usually by turn 7 you should have them within that range, so you can just Bloody Mary, Razor Claw them down. So that's my bat aggro. Alright, Shadow aggro. Triple Skull Beast. Very good 1-drop. Death Rattle. Basically, it'll give you 2 shadows. Skeleton Fighter. Very often it's gonna be a 1-mana 2/2, which is really good. Don't be afraid to drop it turn 1 for the 1/1 tempo. Soul Conversion. Your card draw of the deck works very well with works extremely well with ghosts, which several of your cards generate because your ghosts die at the end of the turn anyway. So just pop one of these. Spartor Sergeant, solid 2-drop, 2-mana 2/2, good stats, generates a shadow. Lesser Mummy, Storm, you'll often have 4 shadows for Necromancy, especially late game or mid game. Don't be afraid to drop it as a 2-drop. Dark Conjurer, because you want because aggro shadow is you just want more aggro cards. There's not any other good 2-drops within the shadow cards that would be that useful. Like none of these are that important. So, and the fact that it can spawn a shadow has synergy with your other cards as well. The one of Undying Resentment. I used to think this card was insane, and it probably is. It's like Eviscerate, pretty much 2-mana deal 4. But in a aggro deck, you don't need that much minion hate. Rabid Necromancer, this card, I thought this card was horrible when I first saw it, but now I'm changing my mind. This card's really insane, because it'll always guarantee deal 2 damage. Like, I'm used to Hearthstone 30 health, like, 2 health is much more. Like, the lack of the 10 health actually changes, I feel, the meta a lot. Like, it makes aggro a lot stronger, and it makes missing turns much more, like, harmful to you. But anyway, so 3 mana, 3/2. It'll usually trade for something, and it'll still guarantee the face damage. Skeleton Knight, solid stats overall. It's gonna be a 4/2 after its Death Rattle or Last Words go off. Aggressive stats, dies, but it also leaves behind another thing, so it's like it's kind of safe, fail safe to AOE. And it also generates 2 shadow because you get a shadow from this knight and you get a shadow from the thing skeleton summons. Foul Tempest. It's basically Arcane Barrage on steroids, essentially. Necromancy deal 3 is insane. More face damage. Play for Necromancer. This is your turn 4 evolve. Summon 2 ghosts, 5/4. It'll usually trade into some. You can usually use it to push 2 face damage, or you can use it to trade in some like low health but high attack person. Phantom Howl. This card, Phantom Howl combined with Cerberus, is insane. Like this is basically the star of the deck. Like turn 6, I'll explain the combo. But turn 6, this card guarantees you 11 damage out of hand. And then once again, Amulet Hate, and then Dance to Death. Dance to Death is just good. It's just 2 face damage. And then our last card, highest card, is Cerberus, 3 mana. Coco and Mimi. So Coco and Mimi are +2 attack and deal 2 damage, and they're 1 cost, so they're very cost efficient. So the combo. This is like it's very similar to the kind of Force Unleash combo if you're used to Hearthstone. But what you're gonna do is turn 5. You're gonna play this. Cerberus. Oh, sorry, I forgot to explain Phantom Howl, but what it does is it summons ghosts, and they fill your board, or they fill your board based on how many shadows you have. So say you have 4 shadows, they'll summon 4 ghosts, and each of them have charge. So you can see how it's like old Force of Nature. But anyway, so the combo, turn 5, Cerberus. You'll probably evolve her because turn 5, 3/3 is really weak, but turn 5, 5/5, and then trade in something that's good enough. But Coco and Mimi, so this is +2 damage, that's 4 damage. And then you Phantom Howl. So Phantom Howl, on an empty board with 5 shadows, you should definitely have 5 shadows by the time turn 6 comes around. So that's going to be 5 charges, or 5 storms. And then combined with the 4 damage from here, that's 9 damage out of hand. And assuming they have no wards, that's 9 damage to face. And if you have any evolves left at turn 6, which this deck should definitely evolve aggressively, so don't be surprised if you don't. Sometimes you do if you can afford to get away with that. But if you do, the extra evolve means another 2 damage, so this is 11 damage out of hand in this case. Yep. So turn 5, Cerberus, turn 6, Phantom Howl plus 2 buffs. And that is generally the way you want to finish your opponents. Also, if you don't have a card to play on like turn 4, don't be afraid to just Demonic Strike face. Like I said, it just wasting your turn doing nothing is really bad. Like if you waste your turn 4 in this deck doing nothing, you're fucking boned. Alright, so those are the aggro, and then we go mid-range. I think mid-range is probably my most played is Stormhaven. I just really like the concept of Haven. Just the amulets, plus it's a meta deck. Okay, so mid-range, we only run 2 Quick Bladers and then 2 Vanguards. Quick Blader, we have quite a few buffs in the deck. Also, and it's just a good turn 1 play, just solid, just poke face. Also, we run 2 of the Pompous Princesses, so they pull, so often or not, these just come out for free. Vanguard is just a 1/2 officer tag. Solid card. Basically another goblin, but with the benefit of an officer tag, and it can be buffed by a lot of the cards we have. So your 2 drops is where you want to be slightly, 2 and 3 drops are where you want to be slightly aggressive. Triple Fervid Soldier, 2 mana 2/2, with a buff possibility and the officer tag. It's good enough. Ally Commander comes into play. You run quite a few of those. Like all your late game, all the late game legendaries I'll get into are officers. Veteran Lancer. This card is actually really good, especially in the aggro matchup. Just having the taunts available really like gives you the edge over aggro. Yeah, Veteran Lancer and 2/2 stats, normal stats. Made Leader, kind of a searcher, not really, because this card game doesn't have dedicated searchers, but deck thin, put a random commander into the deck. It's just good for a 2 mana card. Officer tag as well. Whole Sword Swing, you're mid range, so this is a bit of minion hate. Get rid of anything with 2 health, damage someone, and you'll summon a knight. Pretty good. Double Arcane Barrage, once again for the AoE, because this deck outside of these doesn't really have much AoE. Okay, so turn 3 is kind of like our catch up or kind of board stabilizing turn. Fencer will let our earlier minions trade up or just go more face. This will often just go face. You plop this down turn 3, go face with it. And then Pompous Princess, this is good in that it pulls a card out of your deck, and it pulls a 1-drop out of your deck, and you don't want to be drawing 1-drops past this turn. Like 1-drops are only good for filler, so pulling these out of our deck is good. Also, it lets people think that we're running freaking Banner or some shit, because you usually do this with Banner or something. Floral Knight, you're solid, evolve, turn 4 play, very strong. I believe of all of the turn 4 evolves, this one provides the most stats, but it has the least direct board impact. Like the other, actually, the other ones are, yeah. Other ones that are played at least. Actually, no, forgive me. The Elven one doesn't have as much board impact as well, but it's still solid. Evolve it, you get 4/5 plus 2/2 plus 1. That's what 7, 8 of worth of stats on turn 4. It's pretty strong. Dance of Death. I don't run 1 execution because I couldn't find any cards I wanted to cut for it, and I'd much rather have the Dance of Deaths. Rally of Regal Saber. Very strong card. Commander tag. You want to drop it when your opponent has 3 or more minions, because then it gains resistance to enemy spells and effects. This includes monster effects, so stuff like or follower effects. So things like Tsubaki won't affect it, Priest of the Cudgel won't affect it, so really strong in that regard. So that means your opponent, if they're playing aggro, has to trade in minions into this, and this will usually soak up like at least 2 or 3 minions. Plus evolved, it becomes like, if it's 3, then it becomes like a +2, 7, 8 on turn 5, which is really strong with 7, 8 taunt with whatever immunity. Advent Blader, it's pretty bad stat-wise because 3/4 usually want a 4 mana card, but it adds 2 officers into our hand, so this is going to be our kind of hand refresher in the late game. Just a solid card. Sage Commander, it buffs because we have a lot of cards that spam out in the early game, and this just becomes really strong, just +1/+1. Usually you can hit at least 2 or 3 minions on board. And this card combos really well with the next card, Sea Queen Otohime. I believe in a vacuum, Otohime has the most stat value for any card, I think. And that's in a vacuum. Like, you just plop a card on the field, and whatever it does, whatever gives you the most value. So if you have 4 empty slots, that's 4/8 already from bodyguards. Add on to the 3/4, so that's 7/12 on 6, which is really insane. Tsubaki. This card I'm actually really surprised how strong this is. So first of all, 4/3, you usually want 4 stats. And then ambush, that's probably like half to 1 stat, I guess. But this fanfare, it's not that good against aggro, but against mid-range and control, it's insane because you usually get rid of like a really big monster. And the fact that this leaves it in stealth means that your opponent will rarely be able to remove it. So next turn you just go face with 4, usually end it there. And finally, the one of Alwita's command. This is basically Call of the Wild, but for those of you that play Hearthstone. Summons a pirate and a Viking, and a pirate and Viking are basically a 2/3 taunt and a 3/2 storm. So turn 6, you can drop this for 5 face damage with evolve. Or if you're behind, you can drop it and get a 3/2 to clear one of their things, and then evolve your 2/3 into a 4/5 taunt, clear another thing. So overall, very solid, very versatile card. Can be a finisher and can guard you for a bit. So general strategy with this deck, surprisingly enough, I feel most of my games are usually won before like all of these cards come into play. So it plays like for me, a lot of the times I win is like playing it sort of aggro-ish, like curving out extremely well in the early game, like 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, into evolve 4 drop. At that point, it's usually like the game's determined. If you don't get to that point, you usually want Aurelia to hit 3 minions at once, or you usually want to drop Aurelia when there's 3 minions, because like I said, like you don't want her to be removed by something like a Dance of Death or something. And then drop Otohime when you can and you feel like it's safe enough, because Otohime by itself is sort of slow, because at most you're going to evolve a 4 or a 5/6, which is decent, but on turn 6 it's not that strong because it only kills 1 thing. But if you can combo Otohime with Sage Commander, it's really hard to remove, because you're going to have a board of 2 3s once you get Sage Commander down. Yeah. That's mid-range sword. And lastly, TempoForest. I actually don't. I'm not that experienced with this deck. I've only played it in ranked several times, but whatever. Alright, so early game, you pretty much want to see everything like behind this line in your hand with acceptance of nature's guidance. Basically, you want all of your card generating effects, your fairy generating effects. So, and also Elfchild May, because Elfchild May is busted as fuck. But so basically, always keep Water Fairy, Elfchild, Fairy Circle, Fairy Whisperer, and Sylvan Justice. And if you're going second, of course, the turn 4 evolve. But anyway, so Water Fairy, it's a 1 mana 1/1 that gives you a fairy. It's good. Stats not the best, but the fact that it gives you a fairy makes it good. Elfchild May. Okay, this card is hella fucking annoying to deal with, especially because of all the bounce back cards that Forest runs, like your triple Nature's Guidance and your triple Ancient Elf. Make it so you'll continuously have to be able to deal 1 damage to enemy followers on a really cheap level. Think of this as just having like a continuous angelic snipe. Nature's Guidance, solid card, lets you recycle effects. Cards you generally want to hit with Nature's Guidance. Elfchild May, like I said. Rhinoceros for big burst damage. And then Elf, where is it at? Crystallia Tia, because Crystallia Tia is also broken. But yeah, so basically, card recycle, low cost means it adds to your card played count, and it's a card draw. Alright, Fairy Circle, Fairy Generation, low cost card, combos well, puts more fairies. Fairy Whisper, it's basically a water fairy, same stats, but for 1 more mana, you get 1 more fairy. And yeah, there's also no other really cheap fairy generation other than this, so just put that in. Blessed Fairy Dancer. I don't see many decks lists run this, but I actually really like this card. I just think of it as an earlier Wind God or an earlier Cynthia. And also, it helps you trade up really early at the start of the game. And can also be used to close out games in the late end game as well. Okay, Rhinoceros. This card is so dumb in its design. I don't think this is a balanced card at all. Um, if anything, it's like it should be. I feel like it should be at least 1 mana more. But this card, for every card played this turn, it gains +1 attack while in hand, and it has storms. So basically, you dump a bunch of fairies, well, not low cost cards. You play this, you go face, and then you just Nature's Guidance again, and then play this again and go face, and that's 2 more bonus off of whatever amount you had. So essentially, like, if you play cards and you still have 5 mana left over, and your opponent has, and the elf person has 5 mana left over, expect to see this combo, because this will be however amount of cards they played before. Boom, face damage for that. This goes back with Nature's Guidance, and then they drop it again, and then add 2 to however amount of damage you took after that. Alright, moving on. Elfguard Lisa, very, very good 2-drop. Makes your stuff immune to damage. Makes your monsters immune to damage, essentially. Very strong. Basically, if you feel like your opponent has some AoE coming down, just pop this. I mean, you can even just pop this a solid 2-drop. Crap, did I take that out of my deck by accident? Yeah, I think I did. There we go. Okay, Sylvan Justice. Minion Hate. Very fast card, 2 mana, deal 2. Put a fairy into your hand. Not much to explain. Just a 1 of Angelic Barrage. I feel like in this deck, since it swarms so much, you don't really need that much AoE. You can rely on the fairies that you make to do it for you. But just a 1 of is good. Ancient Elf. This card is super busted. Like, on hand, just reading it, ward, return all other follows to your hand, gain +1/+1 for each follow returned. It doesn't seem that strong, because 3 mana, 2/3 taunt, return stuff to hand. But the fact that you can bounce stuff back is really good, especially in fairies, or forest, or elves, or goddamn, whatever. Yeah, because you have a lot of really, really strong fanfare effects, like really tempo generating fanfare effects. And also, a lot of the cards you bounce back, just 1-cost cards, so they don't matter too much. You just play them back next turn. Usually, like, when you drop this turn 3, you can have, like, 2 or 3 things out. Like, you'll have an Elf Girl May out, you'll have, and, like, 2 fairies or whatever. You drop that, you bounce back the Elf Girl May, you play this, if you bounce back, like, say, 3 cards or something, this turn 3 is a 5/6 taunt. That's very hard for a lot of decks to deal with on turn 3. Alright, going on. Elven Princess Mage. I think I mentioned this earlier, but she has the least impact directly when she's evolved to turn 4. Actually, interesting enough, this isn't the actual Forestcraft turn 4 evolution card, because their turn 4 evolution is pretty bad if I recall. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. This is their actual turn 4 evolution. Return another follower to the player's hand. It's very meh. Very, very meh. But anyway, so this card, it puts 2 fairies into your hand. Most importantly, they cost 0. So if you you should evolve this turn 4 whenever you can. Like, just having 2 0-cost fairies makes comboing and getting cards off so much easier. Just think of it like this. That's 2 extra damage onto your roaches. And if you do a bounce back, that's 4 extra damage. Just dropping the fairies down. It's very strong. And most importantly, if you play this turn 4 and evolve it, then turn 5, you're able to play Crystallia Tia to her full effect. And I'll get into that when we get there. But yeah, just know, always evolve it, trade it into something, get 2 free fairies, 2 0-cost cards. Like, 0-cost cards, in any card game that relies on, like, a mana system, or in this case a play point system, is usually hard to balance. And they're usually very powerful, especially in decks that are combo oriented. Moving on, the 1 of Wind God, just +1 to all your minions, and your minions often are just like weak fodder, so just send them in. Just helps trading a lot. 1 of Execution, 1 of Dance to Death. I don't feel the need to run 2 in this. I feel like I have enough. Execution for PTP. Crystallia Tia, busted ass card. When you can, if you're playing for control, you want to bounce this card back. If you're playing for aggro, then you, not against, but if you're playing towards, like, with the mindset of being aggro versus being control. If you're playing more control, bounce this back. If you're playing more aggro, bounce Roach back. But Crystallia Tia, so Yeah, sorry. I just got lost sidetracked. But yeah, you play your turn 5, and if you play 2 cards prior, or you play her for 5, if you play 2 cards prior, then she summons Eve. Eve is a 6/6 ward, but since it's technically evolved, it also has the rush effect. So turn 5, you get a 1/1 plus a 6/6 ward, which is insane in this game. That's really strong. Yeah, and that is without having to spend your evolution point. And that's what makes Elf Princess Mage also really strong, because you play this turn 4, and then next turn, you probably trade in whatever you have with this. Drop your 2/0/0 fairies, and then drop this card. And then, and that means turn 6, you've played 9/9 worth of stats. 6/6 of them is rush with ward, so it's just a very, very value card. Just bounce it back whenever you can, because after turn 5, it becomes very easy to sit this off because of all the fairies you have. And then finally, we have Elf Knight Cynthia. Elf Knight Cynthia, very, very versatile card. Basically buffs all your fairies when they attack, so very good finisher. And then its evolution summons 2 fairies as well. So when you do evolve it, it becomes a 6 mana, 6/7, 8/9. It becomes a 6 mana 8/9 with a buff effect to all minions you currently have. Very good card, very good finisher. So yeah, don't save. I don't know what changes I made by accident. Those are those cards. I have a few other decks that I have, but I don't really feel comfortable explaining them. So I guess I'll actually, I played Midrange Shadow a bit. I'll go through Midrange Shadow. Midrange Shadow is very similar to Aggro Shadow. You play the. I'll just explain the differences. So for midrange, I play the 2 of Unica, as opposed to like say the triple Skeleton Fighters, just because the heal is good for midrange. The Soldier, because the taunt is really good and it gives 2 shadows. And Deathbrand. Deathbrand's very strong. It's essentially like it's a 3 mana kill anything with 3 or less. It's not as good as the Havencraft one, which is 2 mana banish, but this one has the added versatility of being able to kill things with 4. You still rely on the Phantom Howl Cerberus combo, but not as much because you're not as likely to get them to 11 or 9 health by turn 6 because you don't play as much early game aggression. And this deck just finishes with the 2 of Sharon. Sharon, very strong if you manage to evolve her, because if you do, it's a 6/7 plus 4/4, which is a 10/11. I'll just show you what the Lich is. Lich is just 6/6. And this deck is, as usual, this deck is very easy to get to generate shadows with. You have your cards to generate like Spartor Soldier, Sergeant, and Beast, and then you just have your minions dying off. And then finally for mid range, not your win condition, but basically to make sure you beat the mid game and like hold out. You Lord of the Flies. Lord of the Flies, very good card. It's a basically if as long as it summons any one thing, I feel like it gains value for you. If it summons 2, then it's already really, really strong. And the things it summons are 4/4 Ward, a 2/3 Storm with Drain, so this can go face, heal you up for 2, and the 3/2 Rush, Bane, which is basically like assassinate any one character not behind it, assuming your opponent doesn't have a taunt wall up. So yeah, very good card. Everything it summons is pretty decent. So yeah, that's mid-range. Mid-range isn't that different. And I guess if I go over mid-range, I'll go over control. Actually, no, I'll do that later. Kind of tired. But yeah, that is that.